Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
Virginia Tech football has received tons of good news as of late, from players announcing they're returning for the 2024 season to transfer portal commitments, including 3 in the span of 90 minutes on Monday. The Military Bowl is right around the corner too. We'll discuss all of that and much more on episode 337 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We record on Tuesday, December 19th from our high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer to the show to a friend, and head over to techsideline.com to check out our exclusive and extensive editorial content. As always, the first month of subscriptions are free. Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. This episode is also presented by the Hokie Way. The Hokie Way's $250,000 Stone by Stone fundraising campaign is underway, and they have a set goal for Tech Sideline of raising $75,000. As of today, we have raised over $55,000. To learn more and donate, click the link in our YouTube video description, or visit Tech Sideline to find the link, or email us at staff@techsideline.com and ask how you can donate. We've got a packed show today, and we're so glad you're with us. I'm David Cunningham, Tech Sideline's managing editor. Chris Coleman, our lead analyst and columnist, is to my right. Andy Bitter, our senior staff writer, is across the way. I had in the script that Will Stewart, our founder and general manager, was going to be in the fourth chair, but it's a snowy day, and Will cannot, or he said he cannot get over here. So
school was canceled today, and my daughter's at home, so we got the call at like 4:45 this morning. So yeah, it's slick out there.
Yeah,
so I got the call. I'm like, is somebody I know in jail? Like, what is who's calling at 4:45 in the morning? This is ridiculous.
One of those VTSMA students.
School cancellation.
And Nick Brown, of course, is behind the scenes producing, one of our many fantastic interns from the SMA program. Yeah, it's snowing. Christmas is almost here, but of course, we're not focusing on that. We've got signing day on Wednesday. Very busy week for us.
It is a very busy week for us. This actually has turned into probably the busiest week of the year, since everything's packed in. Last year it wasn't as bad. I take that back. There was a basketball game on signing day, which made signing day itself, and that's the infamous game where Hunter Couture got injured at Boston College. There's a basketball game the next night, but it was less hectic overall last year because there was no bowl game to prepare for. And I spent yesterday attempting to write the Tulane preview. Meanwhile, every 15 minutes, Virginia Tech is getting a commitment. It's just really difficult to keep track of, and I'm sure my game preview suffered as a result. So I can only imagine, what coaches are dealing with this time of year. Like, you're trying to prepare for Tulane, but you've got all this recruiting stuff you also have to do. That's why I guess they allow such big staffs these days. It takes a group effort. Well,
that's why it feels like bowl games have kind of been diminished a little bit. I don't mind. I love watching bowl games anyway, but it used to be like, all right, this is the end of the season, and now the off season starts before the season is over with. And this is sort of the system they've set up. I don't know how you avoid that with a new semester starting in January. A lot of these guys have to get in the portal and get moving to their next stops. So they can be all set up for their next position. The coaching transitions happen too. So I don't know how you fix this necessarily. I think maybe having like a true early signing day in like August for guys that like actually know where they want to go, instead of, they move it up a month and a half from the old February date. I don't feel like that does a whole lot. So I've been putting the signing day in December, I think, was just one of the dumbest things that they've done, because I don't think it's really early that much, and it's right smack dab in the middle of everything that's going on in the postseason.
If you like to watch bowl games, did you watch the ODU bowl game yesterday?
I watched a little bit of it, and I turned it off. I'm like, ODU's got this handled, and they did not indeed have that handled.
Oh, I was at the gym and watching it, and I was on the treadmill, and Western Kentucky stopped them in overtime, or was about to stop them in overtime, and then they switched the game from like ESPN to ESPN2.
that's right. I
Because
saw that.
like NFL Live was coming on or
You got to
something.
do the pregame show or something like that.
A preview show for a game that's going to start 3 hours later. Just can you? It's not like I have the remote control at the gym and I can turn the channel. You
That
know?
is a slap in the face to the famous Toastery Bowl,
It
the
really
storied
is.
history of this bowl
It
game.
really is.
Well, Virginia Tech football's got a lot of good news as of late. Let's catch you up on everything that's happened. I'm going to quickly go through everything since we last recorded 8 days ago, which is a lot. On December 12th, the Hokies' top 4 receivers, Ollie Jennings, Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, and Steven Gosnell announced they were coming back. 2 days later, on December 14th, Georgia State offensive lineman Montavious Cunningham, no relation by the way, committed to Virginia Tech. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Cornerback Dorian Strong, that same day, who had an All-American-esque season, announced he was returning, one of the best coverage seasons of Virginia Tech history. 2 days later, Bhayshul Tuten, running back on Saturday, second-team All-ACC pick as an all-purpose player this year, announced he was returning. He had 12 total touchdowns. Then, that was all last week. Very busy yesterday. In span of 90 minutes, 3 transfer pickups. Defensive tackle Aeneas Peebles from Duke, third-team All-ACC player. Defensive tackle Kamari Copeland from Iowa Western Community College, and then linebacker Sam Brumfield from Middle Tennessee, a second-team All-Conference USA performer this year. Let's help everyone make sense of it in the big picture before we dive into specifics. Chris, what stood out to you about what feels like all of this positive momentum in the last week for Virginia Tech?
I think so far the offseason has gone as well as you could possibly hope it to go if you're a Virginia Tech fan. I think a lot of those guys, I think there were some fringe NFL guys there. And it's like Andy's been saying, these days I think you can make more guaranteed money in NIL than you can, or maybe I'm a 7th-round pick, or maybe I'm an undrafted free agent, but if I don't make the final roster, my signing bonus isn't very big, and I could have made more if I stayed in college, right? I think that factors in. I think Virginia Tech's NIL program is strong. I also think Brent Pry has built a program where it seems like there's good camaraderie and it's fun to play in. So I just think Tech has a lot of momentum going for it right now with the way they played. You know, going 5-3 down the stretch, all 5 of those wins being, you know, of the blowout variety, particularly that last one against UVA. You know, I just think there's a good vibe about the program right now. And obviously NIL helps, but, you know, it's a program that people want to be a part of.
Yeah, I think of all those guys that announced they were coming back, Dorian was the one that maybe surprised me a little bit. I thought he had the type of season that could go to the NFL. I think he has the measurables and can run fast enough that, you know, the kind of stuff that an NFL team looks for. I don't necessarily mean, I don't think that means he's like a first day pick or something like that, but, you know, 3rd round, I could have seen that. I don't know what his draft stock was. So, you know, maybe NFL scouts thought otherwise on that stuff. But, you know, him coming back, Monster Delane also announcing he's coming, staying at Virginia Tech. I don't know if it was an announcement as much as it was just like, he put a thing out with Triumph saying this is home. Like, he didn't explicitly say I am not transferring, but that was the subtext of the tweet, is that he was not transferred. And like, you know, I'm not naive. I mean, I'm sure he had offers, and I'm sure there were people talking to his people about, hey, you can make a lot of money and go play at this major school. They probably throw a bag at him there. So getting him to stay, this is sort of the new normal, that you have to worry about guys that can transfer. In this court ruling now, you can transfer twice in this window right now. It's unsettled at the moment. So everybody in your roster is basically up for grabs all the time. So this retention is a pretty big deal. And, you know, Chris mentioned, I feel like, you know, Brent Pry and his staff have created this environment that guys want to be around. They want to stick around in this thing. And that feels like a very stark departure from the previous staff, where it felt like players couldn't wait to run away from the Justin Fuente era. Like you know, they'd leave in droves in the transfer portal. A lot of them would leave early in the NFL, even though they didn't really have great NFL chances. And I know the NIL piece changes that. You look at that after the 2016 season with Gerard Evans and Isaiah Ford, Bucky Hodges. Things could have been different if there was an NIL piece to that whole thing, I think. But you know, I think they're creating an environment here where players like it. It's fun to be around. They don't really dread going into the building right now. And I think that's what you need in addition to having the NIL piece and being able to be competitive with other schools out there.
We chatted with Brent Pry, Chris Marv, and Tyler Bowen, the coordinators, on Saturday. I thought Pry's comments about Strong were interesting, just about what he can do and what his feedback, the feedback he got from the next level. And it was interesting to kind of pick Tyler Bowen's brain a little bit about just what the staff's schedule is right now. What stood out to you about those interviews?
Yeah, I think with Pry talking about Strong, saying he wants to be a first-round pick. I don't know if he has that ceiling necessarily, but I think he gives himself a chance to play into it next year. We'll see how often he's challenged. He wasn't challenged a whole lot this year in terms of number of passes that go his direction, but I think that was a function of there were other places to go in the defense that you could attack this defense, especially in the ground game, that you didn't need to throw it a whole lot. So we'll see if Tech is better against the run next year, if maybe he gets some more chances in the pass game, guys throwing his direction. Other than that, it wasn't all too surprising, anything that they talked to us about. I feel like these coaches are just kind of trying to juggle everything right now. They're on the road recruiting. They're trying to prepare for a bowl game. Sounds like for a lot of those practices, they had GAs and some of the staff that was here in town running those practices just to sort of keep things sharp until the main coaches got back from the road. So this isn't, this is don't cry for me, Argentina. This is not like we're feeling bad for these coaches. They get paid a good amount of money to do all this stuff. And, to their credit, it sounds like, they didn't want anybody to feel bad about them for the schedule. Marv and Bowen, I think both explicitly said, like, we look at this as an opportunity. This is the fun part, to go out there and do this kind of stuff.
To be good at recruiting, I think you have to enjoy and embrace recruiting. And I think this staff has just kind of shown that they've taken on that challenge. I think they enjoy that part of it. And it's not something that everybody would enjoy. You see coaches these days that are like, you know what, if you're going to pay me this much money just to be an analyst, I don't have to recruit, I'm going to take that. But there's a certain number that really do enjoy getting out there and building relationships and competing on the recruiting trail. And it seems like Brent Pry has built his staff with quite a few guys who fit that mold.
There was a coach in Auburn that really didn't like the recruiting aspect of the whole thing, and he was good at it, but he's like, you're going out recruiting. He's like, I'm going out begging this weekend. It's like, that's what you do. You go out there and you beg these 17 and 18-year-olds to come play for your team. It's like, man, that's got to be a miserable existence if you don't enjoy that thing. And incidentally, he went to the NFL.
Big shock.
Yeah. Didn't have to go begging in that situation.
Yeah, we'll talk more about signing day tomorrow, obviously. But I think that's a cool celebration of we spend so much time covering recruiting. They spend so much time actually going on the road, meeting families, building relationships. They get to celebrate it all. Let's dive into some of these announcements. Virginia Tech's top 4 wide receivers are coming back. Ollie Jennings, Daquan Felton, Jalen Lane, Stephen Gosnell. They announced they were returning in the same announcement, which I thought was pretty interesting, pretty unique. They combined for 105 catches, 1,600 yards, and 19 touchdowns in 2023, despite Jennings only playing in one game and one drive in the second game. Combine that with Kyron Drones coming back. Is any of that surprising to you, and where do you feel like that unit currently stands?
Yeah, it's not very surprising to me, I don't think. Felton, to me, has the look of an NFL receiver, but I think he needs another year of refinement. Remember, the first month to his season, he got off to a slow start. I think he had trouble adjusting to the speed of the game. He dropped a pass against Purdue that got intercepted. He dropped a deep touchdown against either Marshall or Rutgers. And I think he was having trouble just adjusting to a higher level of football. But once he did, he really took off. I think he can refine his game in even more and improve his draft status. It's funny, we all went into the season projecting Ollie Jennings probably to be the top receiver, and now it almost seems like, oh wow, Ollie Jennings is going to be a bonus next year, right? He's like icing on the cake, and I don't mean that in any disrespect. Virginia Tech has a good and deep wide receiver core, to the point where, okay, they're going to be a run-heavy team, is what it seems like. So, like, how much playing time is there to go around after the top 4 receivers, with Jennings coming back? Because with him coming back, that's going to eat into the snaps of some of these backups. That's my main thought, is like, Aiden Green played over 200 snaps as a true freshman, But Ollie Jennings is back, and so is everybody else. So how does that affect the snap counts of those other receivers? Daquan Wright is gone. Does Tech continue with so many too tight formations, or do they maybe spread the field a little bit more with an extra wide receiver to try to keep all those receivers happy? It's a good problem to have if you're Fontel Mines.
Yeah, and I think the big thing to look at is consider how much work this receiver group got with Kyron Drones last offseason. It was split with Grant Wells. Kyron's getting used to the offense. They're going to have a whole offseason where Kyron is the guy. There's no question he's going to be the quarterback next year. All four of these receivers are going to be in the fold. They're going to have all summer to throw with each other. I think that's really advantageous to this offense. I mean, knowing that you have the quarterback in place, knowing that they can work with these receivers. You mentioned the next wave of guys. I mean, they're going to lose all four of these guys next year. Yeah. So it would behoove them to get the next wave ready to go and keep a lot of those guys in the boat. And I'm sure they're trying to do that. It'll be interesting to see because there's really only so much playing time to go around. Can you tell these younger guys, just be patient, your time will come? It's tough to do in this day and age of college football to do that. So it wouldn't surprise me if they lost somebody to the transfer portal because of that, but I certainly think they want to try as hard as they can to keep everybody because they're set up pretty well for the future with the guys they have coming in.
You don't want to have to replace all four guys in the portal next year.
Right.
You can certainly see one or two additions being made depending on the process or the progress of the young guys in the program, but you don't want to have to completely redo the room in the offseason and start from scratch.
When you look at that wide receiver depth, Aiden Green, who played a lot this year, Tucker Holloway, obviously played a lot of punt returner and got some snaps at wide receiver. Xavier Turner Bradshaw, he's got electric speed. What stands out to you about that depth?
Yeah, just exactly that. I think Aiden Green is a really natural receiver. I was really impressed with him as a high school recruit. I think he took to the offensive system very quickly. I think he only called 4 or 5 passes this year, but he was on the field. I mean, Tech obviously was a run-heavy team, but he was on the field for a lot of those running downs because I think the coaches trusted him when it comes to run blocking, which that's not something you necessarily see with true freshman receivers a lot. So I think he's got a chance to be a complete football player. He can play inside, he can play outside. He's pretty good in the run game this year, and he'll develop into a reliable receiver. It's just, once you get past the first 3 or 4 receivers at Virginia Tech, considering the amount they throw the ball, there's just not a lot of passes to catch. So you've got to find a way to keep those guys engaged and show them the light at the end of the tunnel. But I like all those guys. I've really liked Turner Bradshaw since he came out of high school. I think he can be a dynamic player. We haven't seen him on the field a lot, but we have seen how fast he is, and we've even seen him in diversionary roles against UVA. He should get an assist for that one touchdown. Yeah, I think it's a deep group. I think positions, or everybody remembers how Tech lacked depth at wide receiver in 2022. Right now, I think their 5th, 6th, and 7th receivers would start for the 2022 offense.
I mean, lack depth in 2020, lack depth going back to 2016, 2015. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about lack of receiver depth for a decade plus at Virginia Tech, where maybe you have those top 2 guys and then it's okay, wing and a prayer after that on who's going to step up. So this is a welcome change. I mean, in the last 12 months, they've completely reshaped this receivers room to the point where it was probably the weakest position unit on the team to now it's probably the strength.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a stronger position group on this team?
I'm having a hard time thinking one off the top of my head.
It's an incredible, dramatic turnaround.
Yeah. Remember Holman Wiggins always said he wanted 8?
Yeah, I'd love to play 8. It's you have 2.
Yeah.
Maybe 3.
Well, you can count
there were some
Hodges.
seasons where they're just Trey Turner and Tavian Robinson, they're not coming off the field ever. And that was their receiver core.
2017, it was Cam Phillips. Yeah, and that was pretty much it. And because they were starting Sean Savoy, who was a true freshman in the slot.
Right.
They were starting Dalton Keene, a true freshman at tight end. There was just no depth there at all.
Yeah, it's very interesting how a year ago, you think back to the 2021 season, the only wide receiver in that's a top 7 that was here was Stephen Gosnell. Everybody else has been added since then. Yeah. Bhayshul Tuten coming back. How big is that, Chris?
Big, especially, I think he showed this year what he could do. He ran for 727 yards. And remember, he only combined for 11 carries in the Marshall and NC State games, right? So how many yards, Andy, you predict him to be an 800-yard rusher this year?
Yeah, if they used him in all 12 games, maybe he would have gotten
You were
there.
correct in
They really
spirit.
only used him in 11 games.
So I think you get in a situation where you aren't behind in some of these games, and I think if they could start this season over again, knowing everything they know now, he would have rushed for more yards. And I think if the offensive line can improve, and I think I don't think they're necessarily done with portal additions for the offensive line. We'll just have to wait and see. I think he's got a chance to be a 1,000-yard rusher next year. That's actually going to be. I plan to do an Inside the Numbers articles at some point this offseason on 1,000-yard rushers, but I went back like 10 years and looked at the number of 1,000-yard rushers in college football, and there's like 10 or 15 fewer now than there was 10 years ago. It's just not as common part of the game these days. So when you sit here and you got that 1,000-yard benchmark, and it's not quite the same as it once was, so maybe we should set it at 900 yards in the future. I don't know, but I think he's got a chance to be that type of running back for Virginia Tech, and I think the big thing is like drones to a certain extent. It took the staff 4 games to figure out how to use him and things like that, and so Drones is going to have the benefit of being a full-time starter, 12 games with a staff that knows how to use him based on experience. Well, it's going to be the same thing for Tuten. I think they have a much better idea of what type of offense they have to be now, and that's going to benefit him. And his talent level is going to benefit the Hokies. I think he and Drones make a really good 1-2 punch in the running game. I mean, they're tackle breaking machines. Nobody wants to get in front of those guys.
Yeah, and it allows them to play that kind of offense. I think another big piece is he was an All-American kick returner. Mm-hmm. I mean, 2 kick return touchdowns. That's a big weapon.
Third in the country, average.
Yeah, and I mean, to have that as sort of a tangential thing to his running abilities as a running back, I think that's a really big deal. And I think he showed what he can do this year, breaking a lot of tackles, getting the yards he had, even when the blocking wasn't perfect. I think if they can improve that offensive line a little bit, I think you're right. I think he can have a substantially better year in 2024.
If they can put him in a position where he's breaking more tackles of cornerbacks and safeties as opposed to defensive ends.
Right. If he can do that against defensive ends, like imagine what he can do against a guy who's 50 pounds lighter in the secondary.
I swear the ODU game this year was like the most impressive 64-yard performance I've ever seen. He broke 10 tackles or forced 10 missed tackles that game and barely got past the line of scrimmage the entire game. It was really incredible.
He averaged 2.9 yards per carry in that game, had 55 yards. Yeah, if he hadn't gotten the ball 2 times against NC State, he probably would have been over that 800-yard mark. You mentioned how important the offensive line is, and adding to that, Montavious Cunningham from Georgia State, committed on December 14th, has 2 years of eligibility remaining, 6'3", 305 from Athens, Georgia. He had a 69 overall PFF grade this year, 73.8 in pass blocking. If you look and compare it to Tech starters, I know he's playing against different competition, obviously, but his grades are better. If you look at a common opponent like Marshall, his grades were better than 3/5 of Tech starting offensive line. Chris, do you feel like he might move over to guard? And how big is that addition?
I view him as a guard who can play tackle. I think when you're coaching the offensive line, you try to get your best 5 players on the field regardless, but you can't put a couple of like 2'6'2" or 6'3" guys out there at tackle. You can do that at right tackle, which is what Georgia State did with him. He played right tackle. I think he'll play guard for Tech and also provide artificial depth at right tackle. So he graded out pretty well at Georgia State, particularly against a like opponent, such as Marshall. But you also have to understand that I think he was probably playing out of position at Georgia State. I think he's a better fit at guard, and I think he'll start for Tech. I think he's an improvement. I think he adds talent and obviously will add competition in the room. I think Tech is still, as far as I know, Tech is still searching for an offensive tackle, which shows me that their intent is to play Cunningham at guard, because I wouldn't see the need to take 2 tackles. So I think you're most likely looking at him at guard. I think his initial position will be right guard, and they'll just see how it goes in a competition amongst all the guards.
I think not many guys' jobs are safe after last year. I think you look at the offensive line performance and you go, everybody could have been better in their spots. And if that's the case, and you can find guys from the portal to come in, have them compete, see where they fit the best. They've talked about Chaplin at guard in the past. I don't know if that happens now after he plays a full season at left tackle. I mean, Caden Moore has versatility on the inside. These guys can move around if you bring in other pieces that are better at certain spots. So I think right now the key is just talent acquisition. Bring some more guys into that room. Raise the talent level overall, and then sort of sort things out later. And it's interesting that they're being focused on this right now. Didn't really do that last year in the portal, even though I think it was still a pretty big need, and that was something they didn't go after. And I don't know if that was, philosophically because of what Joe Rudolph wanted to do versus what Ron Crook wants to do. But, once Ron Crook came in, they did go after somebody in the portal, Clayton Frady, late in the process. Didn't work out, didn't really add much to the team last year. They're being a lot more proactive on it this year. And like Chris said, I imagine they're not done there.
We mentioned Dorian Strong. On the defensive side of the ball, a lot more action going on, a lot of guys coming in. Dorian Strong, one of the best coverage seasons in Virginia Tech history, just 9 of 32 passes thrown at him, 28% of passes were completed for 83 yards. We talked a little bit about him already, but to pair him with Mansour Delane, who's coming back, obviously Derek Canteen is gone, but that's a pretty good combination again. I'm like Andy, I was a little surprised that Strong was coming back, considering that he was injured last season, obviously, and then came out and had such a great year. I thought he might go try his NFL prospects. But, Chris, how big is it to get Strong back and then to pair him up with a guy like Mansour Delane, who's played very well?
Yeah, Tech is not going to be very attackable through the air on the outside. With those two guys. So I think that helps you from a coverage standpoint. You can, because of your dominance on the outside, you can maybe funnel things to the inside, and if you can design some elaborate interior coverage schemes, you can make some things difficult for the opponents. But, pass coverage to me always starts on the outside. If you have two really good cornerbacks, it increases what you can do as a defensive coordinator with your interior calls. So if Virginia Tech can keep their safeties healthy next year and maybe add some depth there as well, they're going to have to find a nickel, of course. And I don't know if that will be through the portal or if they'll look inward and say, okay, Dante Lovett, you've progressed to the point where you have to be on the field, but you're not going to be ahead of Dorian Strong and you're not going to be ahead of Mansour Delane. We're going to give you first crack at the nickel roll in the spring, maybe something like that. I think Tech signed, like 6 or 7 defensive backs in last year's class, though. So I would have to believe that, they have to at least at some point give one of those guys a chance at a position like that, I think. They were looking at Jonathan Penix there in the preseason. In fact, the initial depth chart this year, I think he was the number 2 nickel on the depth chart, and then as it turned out, he redshirted. But they got some decisions to make there. I think the biggest thing, though, for me, and I know nickel is a quasi starting role, but safety depth, even if it's a backup, like they have to improve that, because even if you throw out the injuries they suffered this year, how many Virginia Tech safeties got a targeting call at some point? At least 3. Stroman, Peebles, and Mose Phillips all got targeting calls against him. I don't remember if Jalen Jones got one.
I don't believe he did, but I don't think it was until at least the NC State game or UVA game, if then, that the 2 starting safeties, Nasir Peebles and Jalen Stroman, played an entire game.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think the modern era that we're in, because of the targeting rule, you need more safety depth than you ever needed in the past. So if they feel like they needed to go in the portal to address that, they can go ahead. But I don't think they're in a big hurry right now. I think with both the starting safeties out for the bowl game, which we'll get to, they don't have any choice but to take a good hard look at some of the young safeties in the program. Like Cameron Fleming's going to have to step up and be in the 2 deep now for this bowl game. So they're going to get a good hard look at him and some other guys like him in practice, and that's going to help them figure out if they need to address any needs in the portal.
You mentioned nickel for next year. Pry brought that up as a possibility for Strong. Just sort of rounding out his game. He said it could be good for him. It could be good for Virginia Tech, too, if he picks up some nickel responsibilities.
Right.
And that might be a way to bring some of those younger guys in and say, okay, Dante Lovett, work on the outside as a regular cornerback. We'll slide Dorian in nickel situations, and you can work on one position on the outside instead of trying to learn both at the same time. So that could be a possibility going forward too. Probably too early to draw too many conclusions about what they're doing next year in terms of alignment, but that's at least in their minds.
Big news yesterday. Aeneas Peebles, Chris, you tweeted when he committed that you said, he was the number one guy I thought Virginia Tech should go after. Now just get Kamari Copeland, Kelvin Gilliam, and Sam Brumfield, and Tech will be set. And then Tech got the two other guys later.
Within an hour.
Did you know that was coming?
I thought Tech was going to get at least two of those other guys. I didn't know it was going to be happening within an hour of tweeting that, though.
Let's talk about Peebles. Third team All-ACC player in 2023 at tackle for Duke. Obviously, Mike Elko has gone to Texas A&M. He finished with the 11th highest PFF grade of 84.1 out of 319 defensive tackles with 300-plus snaps. 1 year remaining, 8.4 tackles, 8.5 tackles, 4 sacks this year. The Derek Jones connection there, I believe. Josh Fuga is the only guy with experience in that room, and that's only because Fuga decided to come back. Put into perspective how big Peebles' commitment is.
It's huge, from a couple of standpoints. Obviously, need. It's one of those things we talk about. Maybe they'll take a safety in the portal. Maybe they won't. Defensive tackles is a situation where they absolutely had to take defensive tackles in the portal, and they've got Peebles now. So, but the scheme fit is what I think is really great. I think it's a tremendous fit for the type of defense that Virginia Tech runs. He's a low center of gravity, really quick, really tough. It's amazing how just overnight how much tougher the Duke defense got when Mike Elko took over, and this is one of the products. So, yeah, I think he's going to come in and play huge snaps immediately for Virginia Tech. He'll provide some pass rushing threat too. He was, I believe, he had 27 quarterback pressures, which I think ranked in the top 30 amongst those same qualified defensive tackles. So yeah, I identified him pretty early. As soon as he hit the portal, it's like, yeah, defensive tackle from the Duke defense. Yeah, that's going to be a good scheme fit, and we already know he knows how to play football. He's proven against teams like Florida State and NC State and Louisville and programs like that. So this is not a question mark. This isn't, we'll bring him in and maybe he'll work out. This is as close to 100% as it gets. So this is he's a tremendous pickup.
Yeah, it's a huge need. I mean, Norrell Pollard, Mario Kendricks, Phil Darius Payne, all exhausting their eligibility. You can't get caught shorthanded at tackle. There's no really quick fix on that. You lose some safeties. You're like, well, we'll shift things around the secondary. Cornerback could play there. Then one of the star linebackers could go back there, I guess, if they really needed to. When you lose a 300-pound guy in the middle, there's not a lot of those guys on the roster that you just plug and play.
Those guys don't exist in general.
No, I mean, it's not, like I've said before, there's not a lot of large human beings like that. They're just in limited supply. And it's tough to even slide a defensive end over. You just don't have enough beef in there in the middle to sort of present a run-stopping force. So that's not a position that you can be caught shorthanded in. You have to address that. You have to make sure that you have enough guys there to withstand injuries, because those guys are going to get beat up on the interior all the time. You're getting hit from every direction. People are coming at your knees all the time. It's just inevitable that you're going to have some bumps and bruises in there. So to get him, and I'm sure we'll talk about Copeland next, Kamari Copeland, they needed that. And honestly, they probably need to go out and get one more guy to feel very comfortable in that interior.
Yeah. You pair the next guy and obviously Peebles alongside a defensive end group like APR and Cole Nelson that have played pretty well, especially towards the end of the year. APR was good all year. That looks pretty good. Peebles, we were told that the Derek Jones, when he was at Duke, was the one who originally put him on Duke's radar, and to get him to Blacksburg is pretty impressive. Kamari Copeland was the second guy to commit from Iowa Western Community College. Technically, he will be a recruit because he's from a JUCO school, not the portal. One of the top JUCO prospects, originally from Virginia Beach, always wanted to play for the Hokies. Jason Stame wrote a great article on him. Go check that out on techsideline.com. He's 6'2", 285. He actually won a national championship this year at the JUCO level. Isaiah Tute, former Virginia Tech linebacker, was on that team. When you look at adding Copeland, putting him alongside Peebles, obviously Tech still probably wants to go get one more. Kelvin Gilliam seems like the top priority option. Highland Springs kid at Oklahoma. What do you feel about Copeland? He was originally at Army. He's played a lot of college football, a lot at the JUCO level. Where do you see him fitting?
Really interesting guy who was like a 235-pound edge recruit coming out of high school and went to Army and then just kept getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, he can play at Army. I don't know if he outgrew their. I don't know if they have limits or
their size requirements.
Yeah.
I think they get like certain exemptions while they're playing football, and then after that, they have like a certain amount of time they have to cut weight and get down to standard size.
But yeah, he's honestly a pretty similar prospect to Peebles. Low center of gravity, really explosive guy, quick off the ball. Obviously, he hasn't played against the Dukes and Florida States of the world, so even as a JUCO, there's some measure of unknown, but it's still closer to a sure thing than a high school recruit, I believe. And he reminds me of a signing Tech made, which turned out to be a very good one in the short term, Deshaun Crawford, who was a small coming out of high school, so he had to go the JUCO route. He was only about 240, 245 coming out of high school, then grew into a defensive tackle and just became a tremendous fit for Virginia Tech's scheme, at least the Bud Foster scheme. He was not a fit for Justin Hamilton's scheme. Then to show you how important fit is when it comes to defensive tackle, like if you look at Crawford after he left Tech, I think he transferred to Southern Miss, and he wasn't as good for Southern Miss as he was at a higher level playing for Virginia Tech, simply because he was just a perfect fit for that scheme. So that's what I really like about these two gets for Virginia Tech, is just how great they are for the scheme.
Yeah, Copeland, I haven't seen him play. I haven't looked at film or anything like that. I'm not a film type guy. His background almost kind of seems like Phildarius Payne a little bit, where he was maybe under-recruited coming out of 757, went the JUCO route. Edge guy, interior guy. It seems like they've grown into an interior guy. So I'll be interested to see how he performs once he gets here.
The third guy, Sam Brumfield, a linebacker. That's a huge pickup, huge need. 5'11", 226, second team All-Conference USA performer this year. 81 tackles, 6.5 for losses, 3.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 73.0 overall PFF grade this year. Virginia Tech needed a Mike linebacker and went out and got one.
Whereas those defensive tackles, they aren't guaranteed a starting spot because they're going to have to compete against each other, plus Fuga and Panay. Brumfield's going to walk into this team and start. They won't put him out there with the ones on day one, most likely, because you technically have to prove it, but he's basically going to walk into this team and start. He played against Alabama last year and held his own. He had a great game against Missouri last year. He's proven he can play against Power 5 competition. The only bad game he had this past year, I think, was against against Liberty, I think, and basically everybody has bad games against Jamie Chadwell's offenses. He's that good of an offensive coach. So I think this guy, I wish Tech had him this past year. It would have been worth at least one more win, I think. But this is the type of Mike linebacker that you're looking for.
Two things. Middle Tennessee has got to hate Virginia Tech. They took Jalen Lane the previous years. Like every time they have this really good player, that they take him at a higher level. So it sort of almost feels like a feeder program with the Hokies. Second thing, sounds like he has a pretty close relationship with Chris Marv, who I think recruited him when he was at Mississippi State.
Yeah, he's a Mississippi guy.
They kind of look similar. Like you look at Brumfield, he's like a stocky, powerfully built guy. That's what Marv was. I mean, he was like 5'11", 250 or something like that. I don't think Brumfield's quite that big, but he is jacked. I mean, he is a big guy for a linebacker. I wonder how much on the same wavelength and just sort of the same physical stature they are there. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Marv. And Marv was a fantastic player. He was at Vanderbilt, really smart guy. Who I think when they were there, I think they got to a bowl game by the time he was a senior.
5'11". His Vanderbilt profile says he was 5'11", 242. Middle Tennessee, Sam Brumfield says 5'11", 226. So
okay,
maybe
not as big.
He looks a little bigger than that, though.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
But
we'll see what happens when he gets to Tech in the spring, and they update to his,
but this was just
weight.
such a huge position of need. I mean, we all saw it this year, just sort of the struggles they had, not only in stopping runs, but just getting lined up correctly. I think they need somebody in that defense to get everybody lined up, everybody on the same page, and then, when the run plays coming at them, step in the hole and make a stop. And I think this is a guy that can do that. And all of a sudden, this position's set. I think it allows you a little more comfort at the will spot where, Keller maybe is a little bit more comfortable at the will spot. Jaden McDonald's played there a little bit. Kelly Lawson, didn't have a great year overall this year. He was injured, beat up in the second half of the season. I think he still has high potential there. So shoring up this Mike spot, I think that makes that whole linebacker group feel a lot better.
Yeah, and I want to point out, height is not important for a Mike linebacker. Like, just get a tough guy who can play football. That's right. Who cares about coverage if they can't stop the run?
Well, how many guys were not tall and they hit like Jack Tyler,
Vince Hall, Jack Tyler, George Del Rico.
Right.
Virginia Tech has never had a tall Mike linebacker that I can remember. Maybe Bruce Taylor, although he was like a Mike and a backer. It's just tall Mike linebackers.
Tremaine Edmonds was pretty tall.
Yeah, he was a backer. He's
a
a Mike in the NFL though, which is interesting. But I think it's probably a little bit under the radar compared to the defensive tackles, but Tech had to sign a Mike. Again, it's not like safety where, maybe we'll sign one. Maybe we'll get a running back. Doesn't really matter if we do or no. They had to have a Mike linebacker if they wanted to improve their defense.
Last question before we transfer over to the Military Bowl. We've talked about, kind of gone down the list of the guys who have committed and the additions and everything. When you take a step back and look at the big picture of this Virginia Tech roster, where do you feel like the Hokies still need to add, and what positions do you feel good about? Is there anywhere that you go, Virginia Tech still needs a guy here? Because it feels like before yesterday, had we recorded this before all the news came out Monday, it was, they still have to fill holes at defensive tackle and a linebacker. It seems like those holes are more filled now.
I've heard they want a third defensive tackle, and I would personally take 3. I think you can get by with 2 because I think Emmett Laws is going to be capable of playing as a true freshman if they need him, but 3 is the more desirable number in my opinion. I would like to have an offensive tackle. It's not necessary. Tech does return both starters. They return every player on the offensive line. They'll get better to a certain extent just by guys coming back, but I'm really interested in improving the talent level there. So I think the guys Tech have gotten so far were pretty much kind of, at least the defensive players, they were requirements. And after this, from here on out, like I would already grade Tech's portal performances like B to B plus level. It can get into A plus level if they get their wants to go along with their needs. So sorry, go ahead.
It feels like everything now is a bonus.
Yeah.
There's no just glaring holes on the team. I think another offensive lineman would certainly help. Any offensive line help they can add to that room. I think that was the weak part of the offense last year. But you're like, they're set at running back. Another running back wouldn't be bad. I mean, he gets pretty young after those top 2 guys. You don't quite know what the tight end room is like. If Gallo decides to move on, it's a pretty... only 3 deep in terms of scholarship guys there, I believe, right now, if Gallo doesn't come back. So maybe that's a spot you could look at. If there's another veteran, versatile defensive back that can play safety and corner, there's another Derek Canteen out there.
Or you just
maybe they could convince Canteen to stay. I mean, that'd be a big boost there. I don't know if that's a possibility, but these are sort of luxury items when you're looking at the portal instead of, like Chris said, needs. They filled those needs at this point. I guess you have to address for injuries and stuff potentially. In that case, I think tackle would still be a pretty high priority. But there's no spot that you go into next season, you go, man, that's a glaring hole right now. I think they filled those all up.
let's do this ad read real quick, and then we'll talk about the Military Bowl. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. As our presenting sponsor, First Bank and Trust Company's support has been invaluable to TSL, helping us bring you all of the great content across all of our platforms. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Bank with First Bank and Trust Company and visit firstbank.com to learn more. So the crazy thing is, we talk about all this portal stuff. That's just a third of what's going on right now. Signing day is tomorrow. We'll have a whole nother signing day podcast. But let's talk about the Military Bowl. That's in 8 days.
Is that going on right now? There's a bowl game coming up. It doesn't even feel like it. It's
Virginia Tech faces number 23 Tulane on Wednesday, December 27th at 2 p.m. from Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium in Annapolis, Maryland. Not playing Cincinnati in the Military Bowl. Biggest news for Tech, both starting safeties are out, and Aeneas Peebles and Jalen Stroman had postseason surgery and will not play. When you look in the big picture, Chris, what stands out to you about just this game? Tulane's missing a lot of guys.
I kept going back and forth. First, I was convinced Virginia Tech was going to win. And then on Saturday, I read Andy's article where Tech's starting safeties are out, and I'm like, Tulane's got a really good quarterback and a really good running back, and when Tech didn't have their starting safeties this year, they were very vulnerable defensively. So then I'm like, I might pick Tulane now. And then a couple days later, you find out Michael Pratt has opted out of the game to go along with their top receiver. So now I'm back to Tech winning the game. So this time of year where you can't even get a good read on who's going to play. I don't even know everybody that's going to play for Tulane. It's not that many people cover the team. It's hard to gather information.
Do we even have an idea who the quarterback is?
I'm pretty sure.
Believe it's going
to be Kai Horton because he's got experience, but at the same time
he's also in the portal.
But we'll see. They've got a cornerback named Jarius Monroe who's an All-American and I think a fantastic player. He's declared for the NFL draft, but I can't tell whether he's going to play in the bowl game or not. Like when his draft declaration, he didn't say. And since hardly anybody covers actually Tulane football, there's no information on it. So I guess that makes them, I'm putting put yourself in the perspective of a coach, makes them a little more difficult to prepare for maybe because there's just not a lot of information on them. So I'm sure half my preview might turn out to be wrong. I wrote it yesterday before all the information's coming out, and I'm guessing that not all the information will come out between now and the bowl. So it's a tough one to preview, to be honest with you. Not to mention they're going to be missing their head coach and 3 assistant coaches for the game. So including the defensive coordinator. I don't know who their defensive coordinator is for this game. So are they going to be prepared for the Virginia Tech offense? Or maybe they're going to take all their frustrations out on Virginia Tech. For all I know, just the stuff will just fire them all up and they'll go out and play their best game of the year. It's a bowl game, basically. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, it's really strange because this Tulane team was 1 win away from playing in another New Year's Six game. Mm-hmm. Instead, they lose that championship game. All of a sudden, they're in the Military Bowl. I can't imagine this is the bowl game they wanted to play in. And I think it's pretty obvious from all the opt-outs and the head coach leaving on top of this whole thing that it's probably they're not the most enthused to go to this game, I would imagine. I don't know, it kind of feels like different circumstances, but Virginia Tech going to the Pinstripe Bowl a couple years ago where all these guys opted out to, coaching change, interim coach on the sideline. Not that was a great Virginia Tech team. They barely scrapped their way to 500 that season, but just so much uncertainty with Tulane to the point that I think when the initial bowl pairing came out, that the first line that came out was Virginia Tech by 1.5. And now it's around 10.
9.5.
Is it really?
Yeah. 9.5.
Wow.
10.
I mean, it just shows you, first of all, the impact that quarterback can have on this whole situation, especially somebody like Pratt, who was, from what I've seen, a day 2 pick in the NFL. I didn't know he was that good.
I've seen
honestly.
as high as 2nd and 3rd round, yeah.
Yeah, so day 2 pick possibly in the NFL, but they lose the top receiver too. They've lost other guys. I can't even name all the guys they've lost because I can't keep track of it going in and out. But the interim coach does the press conference with us, and there's a report he's going to leave, and then there's a report that he's going to stay. So I guess he's going to stay for the thing. They've since hired a new head coach. They hired Troy's head coach.
Yeah.
To take over the program.
John Summerall.
I don't think he's doing anything with this right now. I think he's, on the sidelines like Pry was in that Pinstripe Bowl. So just so many moving parts with Tulane that's tough to nail them down. But then you look at Virginia Tech's side, and almost everybody's coming back. Even some guys that are leaving are like, yeah, I'm going to play in this bowl game. So I don't know. I kind of get a little bit of that Pinstripe Bowl vibe from this one. Maybe not quite that lopsided because, man, that was a depleted Virginia Tech team that we saw there. If you guys saw the offensive practice that we saw before that bowl game, you would have known what was coming in that game. But I don't think it's going to be quite that lopsided. But I do like the Hokies rather comfortably in this one.
All of Virginia Tech's wins this year were by double digits, many of them in the blowout variety. The Wake game was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, but it didn't feel that close. Pitt tried to make a run at it in the third quarter after a fumble, but in the end, it wasn't that close. And then Tech's last two wins were just routes from beginning to end.
Syracuse
basically
did not put up much of a fight.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gio.
Exactly.
Sorry, Gio.
Sorry, Gio.
You had to get that Syracuse mention in.
I think he's contractually obligated to mention it once a podcast.
I tell you what, Fran Brown's doing a pretty good job in terms of recruiting. They got Kyle McCord, the Ohio State quarterback.
Is he good, though? Or was he just the Ohio State quarterback?
Right. I don't know.
Is he going to go to a team that has Syracuse's talent level and then all of a sudden he's tearing it up? I mean, we'll find out. Virginia Tech goes to Syracuse next year.
I'm going to go quickly through all of the people that Tulane is missing that Chris wrote in his preview, which will be published by the time you listen to this. Head coach Willie Fritz obviously went to Houston already. Wide receiver coach Derek Sherman. Defensive coordinator and linebackers coach Sheil Wood. Defensive back coach John Christian Young. That you wrote, Chris, that leaves the Green Wave, which is 7 full-time coaches for the Military Bowl, and no defense coordinator. 2 big members of the defensive line are gone. 2 defensive ends. Keith Cooper, he's transferring to Houston with Fritz. He had 8.5 tackles for loss and 5 sacks this year. Devian Deal, apologies. 12.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He entered the portal as well. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Michael Pratt, high second, third round draft pick. He's gone. He's opted out of the bowl game to prep for the NFL draft. Chris Brazel II. He's Tulane's leading receiver who had 44 catches for 711 yards and 5 touchdowns this year. And then tight end Alex Ballman, tied for second on the team with 33 catches, who scored 5 touchdowns. Lots and lots and lots of unknown. The one thing we know Tulane does have, a running back. Mekhi Hughes, no relation to Evan Hughes. Over 1,200 yards, almost 1,300 yards this year, 7 touchdowns. What stands out to you about this Tulane offense of what you do know?
Well, they have a left guard named Prince Pines, and they have a center named Sincere Hainsworth. That stands out to me. Hainsworth, by the way, is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. He's going to go play in the NFL. But yeah, in all seriousness, Mekhi Hughes is a really good back, and this is the type of back that Virginia Tech, well, quite frankly, they hadn't been able to stop this year. They've gotten torched by backs like him, and whenever they face a really good running back, they lose. It seems like. So you almost wonder if, like, losing the quarterback and losing the top receiver, you're just like, okay, let's just give it to Hughes 30 times. Virginia Tech can't stop that anyway, especially with their 2 safeties out and their backups haven't been good at run fits all year. So from that standpoint, I don't like this matchup at all. On the other hand, if you look at Tulane's last 5 games of the season, they've only averaged 20.8 points per game, and they failed to hit 30 points in any of those 5 games. Mm-hmm. It's basically been from a scoring standpoint, it's been the 2022 Virginia Tech offense over the last half of the season for Tulane. And that was with an NFL quarterback and with their top wide receiver. So something deeper is going on there in their offense where they're not as effective as they should be. I have not watched any of their games. I don't know.
But now they don't have a quarterback, and now they don't have their top 2 receiving options.
Well, that's the thing is, like, you look at a lot of the, Virginia Tech's faced some good running backs who have not gone off on them, and part of it is they didn't have a capable quarterback with it. I mean, I think Wake Forest had some decent running backs. Syracuse had a really good running back. They did not get going because there was just not that threat in the passing game. I mean, Florida State had a threat in the passing game. Louisville had a threat in the passing game. amazingly, NC State had a threat in the passing game. I mean,
It was the same
you did
threat
not
in the
think
run
it was.
game.
Yeah, you did not think it was going into that game. But Armstrong played really well in that game, and obviously they moved Concepcion all over the place. I think if Tulane does not have that threat in the passing game, Virginia Tech can focus all of its efforts into stopping the run, even with backup safeties that they've had, even with the linebacker issues that they've had this year. I think that's sort of yes, this is a very tough running game they're going up against, but if you don't have to worry about the passing threat as much, I think that gives the defense a little bit of more of an advantage to try to stop this thing.
And it would certainly help if Tech went out and took a 14-0 lead.
Oh yeah,
Tulane
that always helps.
Put Tulane in a passing situation where that they can't give it to Hughes. But Hughes had 7 or 8 games this year of 20+ carries, and even had a few games of 25+ carries. So he is a workhorse type. If it turns into one of those games, he might just be getting lathered up in the fourth quarter. So it's important for Virginia Tech to not let it come down to that.
My favorite thing so far I've learned in my prep about Tulane, outside of obviously their logo, the Tulane logo is sick.
I've got a shirt from home field with that logo on it.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
That's a great shirt. They have a position titled dog.
Dog.
They have a dog position. You
How's
say-
it spelled? How's it spelled? though?
D-O-G.
D-O-G.
DOG.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
should go DAWG. Just
Yeah.
go. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. But it's like, it's like Virginia Tech has to start. It's like, you're coming here to be our dog.
Yeah. Well, you're coming here to be our star.
Our star dog. They could combine it.
Yeah,
into one
combine
thing.
it.
I believe he's more of a defensive end.
Yes.
than a-
It's maybe they could create a hybrid
But they
position.
also have an anchor. They have an anchor, 2 cornerbacks. Chris, you talked about their experience in your preview. I'm going to try to not butcher this name. Cam Pettisclo,
I think that's probably right.
cornerback Jarius Monroe, and cornerback Lance Robinson. Those are 3 of their guys on the back end. They're pretty experienced there, even with losing their 2 guys up front. This is a Virginia Tech offense that's clicked over the last couple of weeks. How do you kind of see that matchup playing out?
Yeah, Pettisclo, I'll follow your lead, and if that's wrong,
Okay.
it's your fault because you're the host. Probably the best 5'9" safety you'll see in college football. Legit excellent football player, plays their anchor position. Jarius Monroe, corner, he's an All-American. Pettisclo, by the way, has been named to an All-American team or 2, I believe. So, and they're both seniors. Lance Robinson's another senior cornerback who was excellent. Ideally for Virginia Tech, you get the running game established and then you throw. If you're in a lot of 3rd and 8s against a very experienced secondary like this, that's not a situation that you want to be in. Fortunately, they have 2 opt-outs at defensive ends. So, and it's not that their backup defensive ends are bad. It's just how good are the 5th and 6th defensive ends, because now they're going to have to be in the 2 deep, right? And so Virginia Tech, I think, has an advantage in this game. They should be able to go out and run the football without too much difficulty. But I would expect Tulane to come out and try to get their safeties involved in the running game to try to put Virginia Tech in long yardage situations. But who knows, because I don't know who Tulane's defensive coordinator is. And I'm not even sure whoever it is knew he was going to be the defensive coordinator until the last few days. So I'm not exactly sure how long they've been thinking about Virginia Tech. Or for all I know, they'll come out with the best defensive game plan of all time. It's just when you're dealing with a staff who you don't know anything about and you don't even know who to research, as far as has he ever been a defensive coordinator before, I just don't know what's going to happen.
So I looked up, thank goodness for good game notes and pronunciation guides. It's Pedesclu.
Pedesclu. And you would assume he's from Louisiana.
That's a great Louisiana name.
But
there.
he's actually from Texas, I believe I read.
Yeah, but
Close enough.
they're
That's right next to it.
same
right next
general vicinity.
Yeah.
Tulane also has 2 pretty good linebackers, a couple really good linebackers in Jared Small. Is it Jesus or Jesus Machado and Tyler Grubbs? 3 fairly consistent guys. Andy, when you look at this matchup from Virginia Tech's perspective offensively, this is a group that, again, has consistency right now. Daquan Wright's the only guy that's left, really. The other 2 or 3 guys on the offensive side of the ball that have announced that they're leaving, or apologies. The 2 running backs announced they were not playing in the bowl game, but Daquan Wright's gone, but the 2 offensive linemen will play, and as will DeJuan Lofton. how do you feel like Virginia Tech attacks this defense? I feel like it might kind of just be Texas going to do the same stuff it tried to do all year and had pretty good success with that at the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't think much changes from how Tech wants to attack a defense. It wants to run the ball, wants to throw off of that on play action. And, really the success of this offense has hinged on whether they're capable of running the ball. I mean, they're not really a pass-first team. When the games that they've really opened things up, they've just run it straight at these teams or, misdirection to get around some of these teams if the blocking hasn't been so great. And off of that, Kyron Drones is a pretty good passer doing that. I don't think if you put it on Kyron Drones' shoulders and go, you have to throw for 300 yards for them to win this game. I don't know if that's the best game plan for this one. Certainly he's capable of doing that. I think he's shown that as a passer these last 6, 7 games, 8 games, however many he's started now. But I think they would prefer to run the ball, throw it off of that, and then you sort of get the defense on its heels, regardless of how good that other defense is.
Chris, I like the way you phrased it in your preview. You said the Hokies will be facing a very strong secondary with 4 very good players. However, they'll be facing a depleted defensive line and an inconsistent middle linebacker. Tech's strengths as an offense seem to align very well with Tulane's projected weaknesses. I think the one other guy to mention is defensive tackle Patrick Jenkins. He had 11.5 tackles for loss and 5.5 sacks this year. Big picture, I don't know. We've talked before about bowls and how much bowls matter. What do you feel like a win for Virginia Tech in this game would mean? Does it mean much, or does it kind of just carry the positive momentum forward?
It's like, I'll answer it like this. I don't think a loss would mean anything, but a win would mean something for sure. It would keep positive momentum going. It would say, Brett Pry had a winning record in year 2, and they improved by 4 wins from year 1 to year 2. They had their first winning season since 2019, and all those key players decided to stay. So you can legitimately send the message to donors and NIL donors that they've got something going on here, and now's the time to back the program. And I think it would build momentum going into the offseason. I don't think a loss would have any negative effects other than, but I do think a win could be just even more of a boost.
I don't think momentum exists from one season to the next. I mean, you finish a season, it's 8 months until you start the next season. I think it's long forgotten at that point. And you hear it all the time. It's like a team wins its bowl games. Like, man, we took that momentum into the offseason, really built off of that. That was something that was driving us through the offseason. You lose the bowl game, you go, man, we went into the offseason with a bad taste in our mouth. We really use that as motivation. Like, it does not matter. They will use motivation whatever way they want. I think it makes it easier for Brent Pry to go around and talk to these quarterback clubs things when, you've won the last game. You beat the heck out of Virginia. And then if you can win the bowl game on top of that. They haven't won a bowl game since 2016. I mean, we're talking 7 years at Virginia Tech between bowl wins. That seems ridiculous to me. So just to end the season on a high note, I think everybody's just in a better mood. I don't know if that necessarily has an impact on next year. I mean, all these guys have announced they're coming back already. I mean, that part's already done. When they reconvene on January 17th or whatever the new semester starts, that is a new team from what the previous one is, and will feel different in terms of personnel and guys that are there. So I don't know how much momentum carries over from one to the next, but it sure would feel good for Hokies fans to finish the season on a win instead of another loss and go into the season.
Yeah, I don't think it much matters for the team. I would obviously like to see them win as a fan. I would like to see those seniors go out with a victory in their last game. I think the biggest thing is the mood, the vibe. You're a lot more likely to open up the checkbook as a fan or as a donor than if you're in a good mood, right? And this continues. A win in this game would just continue those positive vibes.
As far as predictions are concerned, all 3 of us all 4 of us picked Virginia Tech. Chris, your prediction was 34-20.
Yeah, since Virginia Tech has won all their games by double digits, at this point I'm going with it by double digits.
I picked the Hokies 31-23. I think it might be a little closer. Andy, you had Tech doubling up on the Green Wave 34-17.
Yeah, the same reasoning. I mean, they've played well against teams that they're better than at this point. I look at that Vegas lineup around 10. I mean, that's not to say 17, a 17-point margin when the line's 10. It's not too out of bounds with it. So
I gave them an extra field goal than you did because I just want to say this name. Their place kicker is Valentino Ambrosio. And I looked him up on the roster thinking, oh, this guy's from Milan or Venice.
It's like a Gucci name.
Nah,
there.
he's from New Jersey.
Same thing there. Do you think he goes around doing the Tommy DeVito, like?
Of course he does.
Whatever that Tommy Cutlets.
I'm telling you though, man,
they've got some really good names.
Valentino Ambrosio, it rolls off the tongue just like Giovanni Heater.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's an A+ name.
They've got some very Louisiana names. I'm not going to go through them now, but if you want to have some fun, if you're bored at work and just want to have some fun.
Nobody's at work this week except
that's
us,
true.
David.
Well, yeah.
Maxi Baudouin the Fourth. Is that how you pronounce that name? That one's awesome.
Go take a look at
Jean-Jacques Hunter.
Elijah Champagne. That's a good one.
Oh, that is a good
Champagne.
one. Yeah.
Frollo. Adonis Frollo.
All right. We have roster cards on the site. You can print all these things out.
Go through, rank your best.
All right.
New
Give
Orleans
us your
names.
top 10 Tulane names on the board.
There you go. Will has Tech 38-21. I want to do some rapid fire Military Bowl trivia of the last 2 times Virginia Tech played in Annapolis, and then we'll wrap up by just briefly going over big weekend for Virginia Tech athletics on the hardwood and on the mat. The scores from the last 2 trips to Annapolis for Virginia Tech. This will be the Hokies' 3rd time playing in the Military Bowl. 2014, Virginia Tech beat Cincinnati 33-17. Shane Beamer was, I guess, the acting head coach in that game because Frank had surgery. In 2018, Virginia Tech lost to Cincinnati 35-31. Nice to not play Cincinnati this time around. In 2014, we got 4 2014 questions and 4 2018 questions. J.C. Coleman was the MVP of the bowl game. How many rushing yards did he have?
It's like 155.
I was going to say
that.
163.
157.
Dang,
you guys
close.
were awfully close. Virginia Tech finished with how many yards passing? Hint, the quarterback yards are different than the total.
Because didn't I thought Sam Rogers completed a pass.
Isaiah Ford completed
a 4
for
okay.
a 30-yard pass to Michael Brewer. So you're
Interesting.
230.
124.
Oh, wow.
Michael
Oh,
Brewer,
my God.
Michael Brewer
was
only
off by
threw
a
for
factor of
90.
2.
Well, yeah, that was
only threw for 94 yards.
that wasn't a great weather day for throwing the football, if I recall.
That was if I remember
It was
correctly.
better than the last one.
True.
Greg Stroman did a little bit of everything in that game, if I remember correctly.
What-
I don't know
I
if
got
I'm
a question.
stepping. I don't know if I'm stepping
I
on
got
one
a
of your
question
trivia
about that. And
questions here.
Joey Sly made 4 field goals for the Hokies in that game. What was his long?
I think he set his career long in that one with like a
goodness.
49-yarder or
49
something like
yards.
that.
Dang it, I was going to say 47.
Hokies had 2 picks and 2 fumble recoveries. Who had the interceptions and who had the fumble returns, and which one went for a touchdown?
There's one that Stroman had that then I thought he fumbled and somebody else picked it up and scored on it.
Did Chuck Clark have one?
Chuck Clark had an interception.
Yeah.
I thought Deion Clark forced a fumble. Maybe
I just
trying to
wrote down
remember
the fumble recoveries. Greg Stroman had the fumble recovery for a touchdown.
okay.
So you're missing a fumble recovery and an interception.
Yeah.
Another interception. Kendall Fuller, was he on there?
Yep, Kendall
Okay.
Fuller.
Okay.
And then the fumble recovery was a defensive lineman.
Oh, my gosh.
Nigel
Daddy
Williams.
Nicholas.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Andy's good at this trivia
Nailing it.
stuff. 2018 game. What was the final score was 35-31. What was the halftime score?
Oh, jeez.
I thought it was 14 each.
It was 14 all.
Was it? Wow.
I'm going to sit the rest of this one out.
I did not look this up. That was a pure guess.
How many? I found this very funny. How many combined penalty yards did the 2 teams?
Oh, my gosh.
have?
It was a lot.
237.
I'd say 200.
It was 188 on 23 penalties.
Including one that was sort of the key penalty in the game where they called Dalton Keene for offensive pass interference, where it's like, what? And if Tech got that first down, I think they win the game. And I think they called him on essentially what was a pick play. And you look at the replay and you're like, that was not a pick play. That's a pretty bad call, I thought.
Ask a back judge.
2018 move?
Yeah, we'll do throwback, ask a back judge.
Who did Ryan Willis throw his 2 touchdowns passes 2 touchdown passes to. One was a wide receiver, one was a tight end.
Chris Cunningham, and oh my gosh,
Hazelton?
2018.
It's Damon Hazel. Okay.
Oh, Kuma.
Yes.
Did Kuma play in that game?
Yeah.
I mean, Hazelton didn't play in that game.
Yeah. How much time was left when Cincinnati scored to take the lead in the fourth quarter?
111.
I think it was like a little over a minute, I think.
129. 3 Virginia Tech football players that are on this roster were on the one for the 2018 Military Bowl. Can you name them?
Jesus.
Tisdale.
Correct.
Yeah.
Who are the Peebles?
Yep.
And who else has been around forever?
Gallo didn't get here 2019.
The specialist,
Colbeck.
Oh,
wow. I wouldn't have thought
really?
of him.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
because
Tisdale's the only one that
Yeah.
I assume will play because Peoples is hurt, and I think Beck still
I think
has his arm in a
Beck is
sling.
still hurt.
Yeah, I think he's
as
done.
well. That's
All right. To finish this, just want to quickly run through all of the stuff that happened over the weekend. Virginia Tech men's basketball beat Vermont by 22, 73-51 in Castle. Did you go to that game?
Yeah, I mean, you sit there at one point and it's like 28-4. How'd you give up 2 safeties, right? I mean, but let me note, we came into the season saying you worry about the defense, and after the first few games of the season, I was still worried about the defense. Tech has made tremendous strides defensively over the last few weeks. Like even in the Auburn loss, like most of Auburn's points came on runouts, right? Off bad Tech offense, more so, and turnovers, more so. Tech's half-court defense was good. Even the FAU game, their half-court defense was good, and then they kind of just gave up after they realized they couldn't score. But in the Ken Pomeroy ratings right now, Virginia Tech's adjusted defensive efficiency is higher,
49th,
better than their offensive efficiency.
69th.
Never thought I would say that this season.
Yeah. I'm refreshing my memory because I have not looked at this box score in a while because I knew we were only going to briefly touch on it. Lynn Kidd, double-double. Tyler Nickel had 13 points. Hokies made 10 3-pointers. It was a good day at the office. The next day, on Sunday, I was up in New Jersey, my second trip to Rutgers this year. Women's basketball won at Rutgers 84-59. It was Kenny Brooks' 500th win, and I thought it was really cool. Unfortunately, Will's not here because I was going to have Will talk about it. Will was in New Orleans in 1995 when Bill Foster won his 500th game as the men's basketball coach. The Hokies, that was a game originally scheduled to play in Cass Coliseum against Wright State. Hokies moved it to Lakefront Arena in New Orleans because so many Virginia Tech fans were traveling to the Sugar Bowl. They played it at 11 a.m. Central the day of New Year's Eve of the Sugar Bowl. Hokies won that game. I believe I went back and looked in the archives, and Antonio Freeman had some crazy day for the Packers, I believe that
Probably
day.
so.
And then the Hokie, so if you were a Hokie in New Orleans, you got to go watch that basketball game.
Freeman was
drink on Bourbon Street, watch Freeman, and then go watch Virginia Tech beat Texas.
Freeman was he was a rookie that year in the NFL, and people were high on him. I think he only caught like 8 passes as a rookie, but then he broke out the next couple of years. But I do think he had a good game late in the season. Maybe like returned a kickoff or a punt for a touchdown, and that put him on everybody's radar for the next year. Man, I wish I'd been old enough to be in New Orleans that day. Well, how amazing would it be to like go to a Virginia Tech basketball game and like 11 a.m. By 1 o'clock, you're out of the arena, you're on Bourbon Street, and then you're going to the Sugar Bowl that night, and you win both games. Outside of like the national title game appearance, I probably think that day was probably like the peak day in Virginia Tech athletics.
And then afterwards, you could meet up with young GA Brent Pry and JC Price on Bourbon Street.
yeah.
Which I think Pry referenced in his
I don't think he's going to reference too many details about it, just generalities.
I think he said they were on Wes Worsham's tab that night. So probably a good time was had.
Yeah. Kenny Brooks, 500. So Kenny Brooks is the second coach to win his 500th career game at Virginia Tech. Foster was the other. There are 3 coaches, men's or women's, to coach at Virginia Tech and win 500 games. Don DeVoe is the other. He coached at Virginia Tech early, won his 500th game at Navy. I thought the women played pretty well, won 84-59, hit 17 3-pointers for the second time this season. Matilda Eck had a game-high 25 points. Transfers played well. And then wrestling capped it off. although that game was before. 29-7 win over a ranked Stanford team. Hokies won 8 matches. Pretty good day at the office.
10 ain't bad.
Yeah, pretty good day at the office for Tony Roby and company. Men's women's basketball doubleheader on Thursday. The women are first against William and Mary at 2 p.m. The men are next at 5 p.m. against American. I messed that up a couple different times over the past couple days trying to figure out what day is which. Before we go, what's coming up on TechSideline.com? Obviously, signing day. Then we've got bowl game stuff. It's a busy time of the year.
Gonna have a couple Brandon Patterson articles, 2 or 3 this week, I think. I'll have a Friday Q&A as normal. I'll have a column on the signing day class on Thursday. I'm going to try to write something up about how the new portal guys will affect the defense next year for this afternoon. That won't be very long because I've been thinking about that for a long time. It should be pretty short and sweet. Let me also add, David, you know how lucky you are? Not many people get to take 2 trips to Rutgers in the span of 3 months.
You stayed at the same hotel,
I stayed at the same hotel Andy and I stayed at the first time, and I went to that bagel place again.
Oh, man.
That was a good bagel place. Yeah.
Elite bagels. Obviously we will have a whole extra signing day podcast tomorrow. How did the videos turn out that you and Will sat down and did on each individual recruit?
It's good. I thought they're about anywhere between a minute or 2 for most recruits, generally around a minute. We'll see who notices. Like, we actually filmed Kamari Copeland yesterday, and Will and I are wearing different clothes than we were for last week when we filmed the other 15. So we'll see if anybody notices that. But yeah, that'll be another feature of signing day as these guys sign. We're all going to be at Virginia Tech's signing day ceremony.
Yeah,
thing.
from like
soiree.
8:30 to 10.
Yeah, something like that. But so Will's going to be posting these videos on social media as the LOIs come in. So watch for that.
A little bit less of a lift. I only have to do 15 or 17 of them.
26 or 7 last
so
year.
many last year. Just kept going and going.
The signing day celebration, this is going to be the second time the Tech's done it. It's pretty cool. You had the opportunity to be behind the scenes for the whole thing last year. It's a pretty unique day from Virginia Tech's perspective.
It's just like a party. I mean, they're celebrating the class. They have this draft board. They're drafting the players. And they put them up in order, and they bring their families onto the live stream that they're doing, and they interact with the coaching staff. And they basically have somebody come up there and say announce the pick as they sign officially. So it's a pretty cool deal that they do. Again, I don't know why they're limiting our time in there. I feel like this is something that everybody should just, be able to see as much as they can. They'd want as much coverage of this as possible. But I think there was talk that maybe the stream will be open to everybody to see that last year. I know previously last year, like, recruits could see it. Like, people they were recruiting in the future, they had some sort of stream set up for that. So it's just a fun day and, real celebratory. I feel like in the past that it would come in and they would just be like, this person's in, they tweet it, and that was it. I mean, this is a little bit more fun. They're treating this like a big thing. And I think that goes back to sort of this is a fun program to be around right now. That's sort of the environment that they create, the coaches and the staff there.
Are they serving breakfast again like they did last year? Any idea?
I hope so.
I mean, I can't imagine there's not food at this thing. They're not going to go through this whole thing and not have food.
Last year I ate breakfast at home and then went there and they had more breakfast. So I ate 2 breakfasts.
Second breakfast.
By the end of the day, I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to nap.
So we'll have a signing day podcast after all that stuff tomorrow. We'll talk to Brent Pry and the 2 recruiting coordinators on each side of the ball, Funto Mines, Derek Jones and Mike Villagrana, I believe. Plenty of good stuff. Go to TechSideline.com.
Corey Moore. I'm going to have a Corey Moore story.
Oh yeah,
eventually.
You want to?
I have the quotes for that. I just have to go through them.
You told us it was great interviews.
It was a really good interview talking to Corey. I had not spoken to him before. I tried to get a hold of him around the Hall of Fame induction. It just didn't work out. So I talked to him afterwards. Got a hold of Bud Foster, Charlie Wiles, talk a little bit about him. Specifically talking about a little bit about his Sugar Bowl interview, the one that's like lived on in YouTube infamy
great.
all those years.
How you doing, Randy?
Yeah. And just the perspective on that, he confirmed some things about that I, had written in my book previously that I'd heard from people about how that was a planned thing that he intended to do to kind of take some of the pressure off of everything. So, just very, you see that clip and you think of him and you go, oh, man, it's just this, oaf of a football player, trash talking, fire breathing guy, and that's not Corey Moore. I mean, that's just like, he was intense. He had those eyes that could stare, lasers through you, but he was incredibly thoughtful, really smart, motivated guy that, maybe that wasn't necessarily his persona that he put out there. That was the big thing, is he said, after that, the coaches are like, okay, yeah, maybe that's not what you wanted to put out there. They understood what that his mom called him, and it was like, what on earth are you doing going on TV and cursing like this? He's like, man, my mom gave me an earful about this thing. So really interesting conversation with Corey. The big heavy lift for me is getting through an hour's worth of quotes and typing those all out, but I will get that story out at some point.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, if you want to read more about Corey Moore, go to techsideline.com. We'll have plenty of signing day stuff, plenty of bowl stuff. Andy and I are traveling up Friday to cover bowl practices and stuff. So thank you to all of our sponsors, the Hokie Way, First Bank and Trust Company. For Chris Coleman, for Andy Bitter, I'm David Cunningham. Thank you, Nick Brown in the back, for producing. As always, this has been episode 337 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Appreciate you watching and listening. We'll be back on Wednesday to chat about early signing day. Have a great rest of your week.